Yo guys, what's going on? My name is HackingIsFreedom and welcome to the 22nd episode of What Was Cut, a series where we would take a look at what exactly was cut from our favorite games. Today we're going to be talking about Fallout 3. This is one of my favorite games from Bethesda, and I really enjoyed the DLCs they made for it. Since I'm a big fan of aliens and stuff like that, my favorite DLC is obviously Mothership Zeta. I just really liked how the story played out, and it's pretty cool how they expanded on the alien stuff and didn't just leave in the original Easter egg. I also really enjoyed Operation Anchorage, but that just could be because I'm a COD player. Anywho, let's search for Dad at Moriarty's and figure out what was cut.
A nice place to settle down.
Either start talking or get your fucking thumb up my ass. Mother.
Textures are up first, and surprisingly, there isn't that many left over. But there is quite a few Pip-Boy icons, so let's start with those first. These first two icons are different versions of the mini-nuke and missile ammo types. I'm not really sure why they didn't just use these ones. I think they look much better than the ones we have in the final game. There's an icon of a police hat, which was also supposed to be a costume piece, but that was also cut. We'll be seeing a bit more of this hat later in the video. This icon is for the also cut night vision goggles that were supposed to be obtained in the Operation Anchorage DLC, which I also cover later in the video. These next four icons are of a Super Stimpak, which was used in Fallout New Vegas, a Turpentine icon, which in the final game it uses the junk icon for some reason, an empty container, which is probably tied to the Oasis quest, and a generic food icon, which was most likely used as a placeholder before the food items had their proper icons. However, this icon is used in Fallout New Vegas for the cave fungus food item. These last icons are for various perks that either never made it into the final game, or there's just no way to see the stat, so the icon goes unused. So we have damage resistance, which you can't see in the game, but the icon is similar to the toughness perk. A throwing skill icon, which was actually going to be an upgradable perk, and it would have made your throwables do more damage. Unarmed damage, which you can't see. Poison resistance, which you can't see either. This one is for your hit points, which obviously you can't see either. Your hit points is just a bar at the bottom of your screen. There's a healing rate icon, which is very strange because you can't regenerate health without using items. There's an earlier version of the light step perk, with the only difference being this version has bear traps instead of landmines. An icon of a perk called Golden Gloves, which was later used in Fallout New Vegas for the boxing gloves. And lastly, for the icons, there's 3 for various vault suits, all of which didn't make it into the final game. This texture here is of various Raider graffiti that was supposed to be placed around the wasteland. I really like a lot of these designs, and it would have been nice to see some different graffiti around the world. My favorite one is the one that says Mama Tried. That is both very cool and sad at the same time. These 5 textures are attempt versions of the Pip-Boy's interface. I don't know how I feel about this early version. I like some of the stuff, while other stuff just looks terrible. It seems like Bethesda was working on a much more advanced stealth system before giving it the axe, as these 2 textures show various stages of sound and detection. There's sadly nothing else left of this mechanic though. This texture is simply labeled as first aid, so I'm not entirely sure what this would have been used for, as Stimpaks have existed since the first game. Perhaps this was an early texture for the doctor's bag you could find around the wasteland. This texture here is for a lighter that would have been used for the Molotov throwables that were also cut. However, this texture was used for the lighter in Fallout New Vegas. The last texture I have for you is of a blank ammo box that, according to its name, is used for the Lincoln Repeater, as it's labeled as Lincoln Rifle Ammo. The models are up next, and we've got some really cool ones to talk about. So these first 2 are cut stops from the railway stations, and they both reference a cut area. Crystal City has a bit more behind it, with it being tied to an also cut quest, but there's no leftover information for the flooded sewers location. There's a model of an air raid speaker, and this must have either been used in the Brotherhood of Steel base, Megaton, or somewhere around Rivet City. A model of a pre-war TV goes unused, but you will actually see this in-game in one of the cut maps I talk about later in the video. There's also a model of a pre-war desk, and I'm not entirely sure where this was supposed to be seen. Perhaps in the Republic of Dave, or in a flashback from the Dunwich building, as that's the only 2 places I could see still having a pre-war desk. This next model has 2 variants, a destroyed one and a pre-war one. There's also 2 remotes that go with it as well. All these models have mower in their name, but to me it looks more like a vacuum. This was most likely just going to be a background prop that would have been placed around various spots. These 2 models of gears were supposed to be used somewhere in the Mechanist layer as props, but for whatever reason they were scrapped. We got a model of a generic bank sign that I'm pretty sure was supposed to be used somewhere around the Washington Monument. Bloatfly meat was supposed to have its own model, but I can kind of see why they didn't use it. If you didn't know, bloatfly meat uses the model of ant meat when dropped in the world. These next 5 models are of cut signs, starting with a sign for Paradise Falls, Bureau of Special Affairs, Center for Extra Typical Research, an Outcast banner, and a sign for the Our Lady of Hope Hospital. The 2 plaque-looking ones were probably going to be used somewhere around the Jefferson Memorial, and the hospital one was most likely placed on top of the building before the design was changed. If you're wondering why the Outcast banner shows Nuka-Cola, it's because it's improperly textured, and it defaults to the Nuka-Cola banner instead. At one point in development, it seems like you were able to purchase a chandelier as a house decoration in Megaton. It seems like a decent amount of work went into this, as it could still be found in the debug room. You can actually pick it up and drop it as well. Here's the model of the Super Stim Pack. Earlier we saw the Pip-Boy icon for it. I believe this is the exact same model used in Fallout New Vegas. There's also a clean or a pre-war version of the standard Stim Pack that goes unused as well. Apparently, Liberty Prime was once on a crane rather than just rising from the ground. You can obviously still see this crane in-game, but Liberty Prime never gets attached to it. This model is of a bolt projectile. No weapons in the final game uses bolts as ammo, and you can see not much work went into it as it's completely untextured. This model of a pre-war ranch house I believe is used in another cut area called QA World Origin. Other than that though, I'm not sure where else this house could have been used. Perhaps in Tranquility Lane. This next model is apparently a recycler. No idea if this was going to be used by the player or not. I'm guessing this is like the mower, or vacuum as I called it. This is probably just another background object. In an earlier stage of development, Rivet City was originally called Rave City, as this model here is of Rivet City, but in the lowest detail possible, and it's actually labeled as Rave City here. I think I prefer the name Rave City. Sounds like a bumping place to be. This next model is a strange one. It's labeled as Texture Scroll, and these two platforms move up and down on the cylinder. I'm not really sure what this was supposed to test, but it's definitely used for testing something. There's also a simple wooden block labeled as Wood Block Test. The last model is a picture frame of the Lone Wanderer's parents. If this was used in-game, it would have been the only time the player could see their mother. Funnily enough, this model is used in Fallout New Vegas in Vault 21, which is very strange. Onto the various cut NPCs, starting with Clancy, and he was going to be a unique encounter, which would have most likely dropped a unique weapon or armor, although once you defeat him, he has nothing on him. Next, we have Professor Malleus, which was a scientist from Vault 92. Professor Malleus does appear in the game as a corpse, but this specific version is tied to some notes and audio logs from the quest Agatha's Song. These two NPCs were cut from the Pitt DLC, and these were obviously used as test NPCs for the new skin details. They sadly have no dialogue attached. There's also a few NPCs all named Teslas, and these people were cut from the Pitt DLC as well. I'm not really sure what they were testing with these NPCs though, unless it was the dirt detail on the skin and the new outfits. Stevie Mac has an unused version where he was supposed to appear during your birthday party, but he was later repurposed and used in the escape quest. Same with Susie Mac. She was going to appear at your birthday party as another member, but she was later repurposed and used in the quest Future Imperfect. Christine Kendall was another character that was going to be a part of your birthday party. However, she was later repurposed for the Future Imperfect quest as well. One strange thing about this version is, she doesn't have her Pip-Boy yet. Gary template was used as a template for copying all the other Gary clones in Vault 108. One strange thing about this version specifically, he's wearing Dad's Vault 101 jumpsuit, which obviously no other NPC character wears besides Dad. There's two earlier versions of the friendly glowing one ghoul that can be found in the Underworld's Chop Shop. The first one was a character called Ethel, and she just has basic dialogue.
Yeah. Later.
The other one is called Meat, and he's the exact same as Ethel. He spawns with no clothes and has basic dialogue.
Yeah, see ya.
Tuck Johnson and Karen Johnson seem to be a couple from Andale. They both have unused script for interacting with other residents of Andale, but none for interacting with the player. It's unknown if these people would have been important to a quest, or if they were just going to be background NPCs. An NPC called Trigger was supposed to give the player some clues during the quest The Replicated Man, as referenced by some scripts, but it's unknown if he had any other purpose. The Rock Creek Hunters were a faction of settlers that appear in a huge cut cell called QA World Origin, which I do show off later in the video. I'm guessing they were cut because the area they belonged to was cut as well. It's interesting that they're called Rock Creek Hunters, while the cut area is known as Rock Creek Estates, so I'm not sure if that's just a typo or what. Lucy West's father is a placeholder NPC for Davis West, which appears in-game but as a corpse. I guess at this point in development they were unsure of his name and whether or not to have him alive. Stacy is an unused Little Lamplight resident, and she actually has a bunch of random unique dialogue. I'm not really sure why she was cut, as she looks pretty complete. Billy McShady was an NPC that was cut from the Pitt DLC, and there's absolutely no internal references to him anymore, so it's unknown where he was going to be seen. It's possible that he might be related to John, which is the guy you encounter when you enter the Steelyard for the first time, because if you didn't know, if you kill the Trog he's speaking to, he'll mourn the words, Billy. Speaking of Trogs, Test Street Trog is a cut NPC from the Pitt DLC. Obviously by the name, it was just a test NPC. Interestingly, he has his very own test cell, which you can see in this video here. Paladin Northup is an NPC with the internal name of Chesterbrook BOS02, which obviously suggests he was placed in Chesterbrook, and the numbering suggests that there was other Brotherhood of Steel members along with him. Strangely enough, his dialogue internally is labeled as Paladin Bishop, so I have no idea what's going on here.
We will not give up this position, and the mutants... The best thing you can do is eliminate any mutant... What does it look like? We're fighting a losing battle. They just keep coming. We haven't slept in days. We were looking for Fat Man ammo. One of the scribes found a reference to a storage box and some old documents. We found the box all right, and the key. But then the mutants showed up. If I didn't know better, I'd swear that this was a trap. But the only way that those mutants will lay a hand on this key is over... Later.
There's an NPC simply called Dead Pilot that was cut from the Point Lookout DLC. It seems like he was cut real early in development as he doesn't have any temp dialogue attached to him. I'm not really sure where this NPC was going to be used either, but with the name of Dead Pilot, I'm pretty sure he was just going to be a corpse for aesthetic purposes. Little Toe is an interesting one. To me, he looks exactly like the person you hire as a bodyguard on this trip in Fallout New Vegas. But in Fallout 3, the only internal reference to him is a line of dialogue associated to the quest The Replicated Man. Other than that, it's completely unknown as to what he was going to be used for. Mr. Mulberry is a generic Mr. Handy with some temp dialogue. His editor ID places him in Megaton, so I'm guessing this was an early version of Wadsworth. Sleeping Guy is a test NPC only seen in the debug room. His only purpose is to test the functionality of AI getting into and out of a bed. Finally, we have Twigbag, and she's a pretty interesting one, mainly because she's so mysterious. Twigbag was cut from the Point Lookout DLC, and spawns hostile wielding semi-broken grenades. Although if you do manage to speak to her, she actually has basic dialogue attached to her, so perhaps she was intended to be a unique mini-boss? Armor and clothing is up next, and there's quite a lot to go over. First up, we have an armor set called Outcast Recon Armor, and it's basically the same as the normal Recon armor, but with the Outcast colors and a +1 to perception. This armor suggests that Outcast initiates were once planned. Commando armor seems to be an exact clone of the normal leather armor, but it was most likely planned to be a unique set. The Pyro helmet was going to be a unique version of the Raider Blaster helmet, although it's still very similar. Strangely, this version is missing the buff from the normal helmet. The all-purpose science suit was supposed to be a unique version of the Enclave scientist outfit, although this was later added to Fallout New Vegas. Test Phil Snow Helmet is my favorite cut clothing piece in this list. As you can see, it's a snowman head, but it's misplaced like some of the other outfits on here. This can only be seen if you have the Operation Anchorage DLC installed, and I assume this was a test for some sort of snowman outfit that never came to be. Road Rascal leather armor is once again a clone of the normal leather armor, but the name suggests it was going to be a unique variant. The Chinese jumpsuit was supposed to be given to the player at the end of the simulation in the Operation Anchorage DLC. I'm sure you noticed it doesn't show up in the player's inventory, so the only way to equip this outfit is through console commands. Explorer's gear was going to be a unique variant of the Merc Troublemaker outfit, the only difference being is the weight. Explorer's gear weighs 3 while the Troublemaker outfit weighs 8. Quite a difference. Wastelander's gear was also going to be another unique version of the Merc Troublemaker outfit, although this one weighs even less than the Explorer's gear, weighing only 2 pounds. Remember the night vision goggles icon? Well, it was supposed to be used for this item called the Peepers. You can see that the night vision effect is piss poor and the goggles themselves are misplaced on the character. This was supposed to be seen and used in the Operation Anchorage DLC, but it didn't get that far in development. The makeshift gas mask was supposed to be another unique version of the Raider Blastmaster helmet, and it was intended to be used in Vault 106 to filter out the psychoactive gas. Surprisingly, 2 are placed in that cell, but the spawn chance is completely disabled. Shell-shocked combat armor seems to be a clone of the normal combat armor, as the stats are exactly the same, so with the unique name, it was probably planned to be a unique set of combat armor. Highway Scar armor is very similar to the Raider Blastmaster armor, but it just has lower damage reduction. The astronaut helmet was supposed to be obtainable in the Mothership Zeta DLC, but it seems it wasn't quite finished for the player. It also uses the combat helmet Pip-Boy icon as a placeholder. There's another astronaut type of helmet called the Blast-Off helmet, and strangely, only the child version is equipable by the player. The one for adults cannot be spawned in, nor can it be worn. Remember the police hat icon? Well, here's the costume piece. It's strange that they made an icon and a costume piece for the police hat, but they never made a police uniform to go with it. Easily my second favorite in the list. The Devil's Pigtails were going to be a unique version of the Raider Cyclotech helmet. It's sadly unknown as to where you would have gotten this helmet, but for some reason, I could see this being given to the player by the Mechanist or the Anti-Agonizer. The Power Suit is an unobtainable suit worn by some of the residents of Tenpenny Tower. Also, if you didn't know, this suit is actually very similar to the unobtainable Presidential Power Suit from Fallout 76, which I actually do have. Defender armor is once again a clone of the normal leather armor, but we can assume by its name it was most likely going to be a unique set, with different buffs. This one is very strange. There's a Scar costume piece that was supposed to be obtainable in the Point Lookout DLC. It uses the bandana icon as a placeholder, and this one is also misplaced on your character's model. It seems to have the buzz cut hairstyle attached to it as well, so this is very strange. Robo-Thor Power Armor was going to be a unique version of the Tesla armor, and its stats are similar to the Enclave Power Armor. Pink Power Armor has existed in the game's files ever since the release, and with some simple texture swapping, you can get it to work in-game. It's completely unknown where or how this would have been obtained. A Volt 87 jumpsuit and a Volt 92 jumpsuit were both scrapped for unknown reasons. Fox uses a severely torn version of the Volt 87 jumpsuit, but a normal version is completely absent. The Volt 92 jumpsuit is never seen either, despite it being fully complete. Apocalypse Gladiator armor was going to be a unique version of the metal armor, and it has much higher item health than the normal armor. Apocalypse Gladiator armor has 1200 health compared to metal armor's puny 500. Hand-me-down Raider armor is exactly the same as Raider Sadist armor, but with a lower damage reduction. The final clothing items are 3 different surgical masks. This first one seems to be tied to the Wasteland Survival Guide quest, although no world model exists, nor does it have a Pip-Boy icon. It gives you a +5 boost to your medical, poison resistance, and radiation resistance. The second one is used by your dad in the introduction scene. It seems to be missing its name and its icon, although it does have a world model, meaning you can drop it or pick it up. This last one is from the Broken Steel DLC, and it seems to have its name but no Pip-Boy icon. This one doesn't give you any stat boosts either. I find it pretty strange that Bethesda made 3 different versions of the surgical masks, while they're all visually the exact same. Now we're going to go over the various cut maps, or cells in this case. This first unused map is called Megaton Abandoned House Dummy Cell, and by the name, I'm sure you know what this was used for. One strange thing about this map is, usually dummy cells have absolutely nothing in them, but this one has a fully untextured basic Megaton house. Kinda strange if you ask me. This next one is called DC Int 17 to 21, but in-game it's called Potomac Steamworks, and it seems to be a large sewer area. Nothing spawns here besides some ghouls, which seem to be the same ones used in the Red Racer factory. Judging by the internal name, this may have been when the DC area was much bigger. This map is called T-Grant Int, and this seems to be an interior particle and lighting effect test map. In this first room, there's nothing but a teddy bear, a bucket, a mop, and a dumpster. The other side has a lot more interesting things though. There's a glowing one ghoul that's most likely used to test the lighting from its attacks, some flame effects, blood drip effects, and a dismembered super mutant. Further down, there's a hallway full of gas, which was used to test the gas leak effect. There's also another map called T-Grant Out, and it seems to be another particle test map but in a more open space. There's nothing much here besides some spinning particles in the middle of the map, a vertibird on the outskirts of the map, and something that was deleted as represented by this big exclamation point. This next map is a pretty big testing ground for Operation Anchorage, and it's called Test Landscape Start. I personally really like the way this map looks. I know it's just a test map, but the colors look so good. Plus, you may have noticed I used this map to showcase a lot of their unused items. Anyway, this is basically a huge test map for everything Anchorage. This is basically a map to drag and drop assets to build up Operation Anchorage's landscape. The giant exclamation points are here as well, suggesting that something was deleted that the game no longer recognizes. This map here is my absolute favorite, and it's called DLC Pit Test Perky. When I originally saw this, I was like, bro, what? That's actually what inspired me to make this video. I even made it my thumbnail image, I liked it so much. Anywho, there's really not much to this map besides the obvious creation here. Other than that, the name of the area in-game is called Mango Power, which is just so cool to see. A lot of these other test maps just repeat the internal name or have the basic test cell label. This next map is a small testing area, and it's called DLC 03 Test Tony. It seems to be a map consisting of random props from the Broken Steel DLC. Nothing crazy here, but still cool to see. This map is called DLC 04 Z-Test Marky Poo, and it seems to be a testing area for a lot of the assets and effects for the Point Lookout DLC. Although there's some other stuff here that I'm really not sure why it's here, like this random floating TV that's basically the same as the one I was talking about earlier. And strangely, the slasher mask on Tranquility Lane makes an appearance here as well. Not much else is here though, besides this weird room with a bunch of food items and some weapons. Everything placed in this room actually has no ties to the DLC, so it's kinda strange seeing base game items in a DLC cell. The last funny thing about this map is this poster reading hard work is happy work. You just know Marky Poo was real tired when putting that here. We have another map from Phil, and this one is called DLC 05 Test Phil. This is a testing area for all the newly added stuff in the Mothership Zeta DLC. and the most interesting stuff could be seen right off the bat here. All of these baseball items were all cut from the DLC, and they were just going to be random items you could have collected around the spaceship. You can also see an energy mine here that says deployable cover. We'll be seeing that in just a bit. The last strange thing on this map is this tunnel of water that actually gives you an unused perk called water breathing. I have no idea why this is here, as this DLC is supposed to be set in space. So why would Phil need to test water breathing? Unless there's a water aspect that I'm not remembering in the DLC. Let me know in the comments. The only other thing I think it could be used for would be suffocation, because space? This was another map I was a bit stunned about when seeing for the first time. It's called DLC 05 Test Jesse, and yeah, you're not seeing things. You actually spawn on a giant pool table with functioning balls, and these robots you can use to push around the balls for a semi-small game of pool. I'm guessing Jesse was just bored and decided to make a pool table for fun, but Jesse Tucker was a level designer for Fallout 3, so anything's possible. The rest of the level is basically an interior lighting test for the alien ship. QA World Origin is a strange one. This map is huge, and when I say huge, I mean like the entire wasteland in low poly form is in this cell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So this area was also known as Rock Creek Estates, and there's a few things that can spawn in this cell. Some wasteland hunters, Yaogoys, and Mirelurks. There's also going to be a unique gang called the Rock Creek Hunters roaming around, which I showed off earlier in the video. Anyways, a little about the wasteland in the background. I believe this is actually a beta version of the wasteland. As you may or may not know, the DC section of this map is going to be a lot bigger, and it's hard to tell in this cell because everything is shrunk down and in low poly form, but it seems like the DC area is a lot bigger than what we have in the final game. This model here, I'm pretty sure is supposed to represent the Red Rocket Garage that's close to Vault 101. I don't know, it could just be because everything's in low poly, but everything out here just feels like a beta design. And obviously, to finish off the unused maps is an area that I'm sure everybody knows about by now, but I absolutely can't leave it out of a video like this. This last map is called Test QA Items, and this is basically a room with every single item in the game, from all categories. There's even a few unused weapons and items that appear in these boxes as well. This room also has every variant of lock, both physical and terminal based, as well as a test NPC called Sleeping Guy, which I showed off earlier. This, however, is his true home, doomed to sleep here forever. Other than that though, there's really nothing else of interest here. Finally, I'd just like to say if you want to see more cut maps, check out my other videos I made on them. I made one on the maps from the base game, and another one just on the DLCs. My voiceover is absolute dog shit, but it does get the job done if you're interested in the maps. Links will be in the description. On to everyone's favorite topic, the unused weapons. So to kick us off, we have the Breaker, and this was going to be a unique nail board. It has identical stats to the Board of Execution, with the only difference being its value. Next up, we have Love Tap, and this is going to be a unique version of Brass Knuckles. The Love Tap is stronger than the normal Brass Knuckles, but it's oddly weaker than the Spiked Knuckles. The Law Dog was going to be a unique version of the 32 pistol, with the only difference being the Law Dog is stronger by 3 points. This one is kind of strange to me, as I'm not really sure what it was supposed to test, but this weapon is identical to the normal 10mm pistol, except this version never needs to be reloaded, nor does it consume ammo. Wanda was going to be a unique assault rifle, and it has higher damage, magazine size, and a higher value than a standard assault rifle. This next one is very cool. It seems Bethesda wanted a grenade launcher for the Broken Steel DLC, but couldn't get it finished in time. It's fully functional, but it just uses the combat shotgun's model. This would have been a super fun weapon to use. It seems in Mothership Zeta, they wanted to use a wrench as a weapon rather than it always being a junk item. Although, it does seem like it didn't get that far in development, as when you equip it, it's upside down in the player's hands. It also seems to use the animation of a knife, but the Pip-Boy icon of the baton. Clover's Cleaver was going to be a unique version of the Chinese officer's sword. It seems to have similar stats to the normal sword, so it didn't get that far in development. Pause Fishing Aid was supposed to be given to the player as a reward in the Point Lookout DLC, but it was scrapped for some reason. Pause Fishing Aid is actually weaker than the normal double barrel shotgun by 5 damage points. Black Bart's Bane was going to be the only unique BB gun in the game, and it would have done double the damage of the standard version. The standard BB gun deals 4 damage per shot, while this one would have dealt 8 per shot. This next one is simply called Test Gun, and it surprisingly doesn't do a stupid amount of damage like you might think. It basically only fires grenades that don't explode, so I'm pretty sure this gun was only used to test projectiles. A Signal Flare was a cut throwable from the Operation Anchorage DLC, and this was most likely going to be used to call in a vertibird. It doesn't seem to work at all, and the thrown object has no collision, so it just falls right through the world. Kinda like the smoke grenade, except this one has collision when you throw it, but it doesn't seem to work in any other way. It just blows up like a regular grenade and doesn't deal any damage. There's also another grenade type of weapon called Gas Trap Dummy, and judging by the name, this was a test for the various gas traps around the wasteland. The Curse Breaker was supposed to be a unique baseball bat, with a unique texture which you can see here. The Curse Breaker deals more damage and has a higher value than the normal bat. There's also another unused bat called Excalibat, and it's statistically the same as the Curse Breaker, so I'm not really sure what the plan was here. This is a beta version of the Tesla cannon that was added in the Broken Steel DLC. You can see it pretty much uses all of the missile launcher assets, which makes a lot of sense. Another weapon that was cut from the Broken Steel DLC is called Discharge Hammer, and I feel like this would have been another sick weapon to use. It's basically a super sledge with added electricity damage that would stun your enemies, and it also seems to have a much faster swing. Yet another cut weapon from the Broken Steel DLC, and another super cool one to use. This one is called Lightning Gun, and how this works is it shoots a cloud first, which you can't actually see. Then firing again into that cloud sets off a bunch of lightning bolts. It's obviously very unfinished and pretty broken, but it's pretty fun to use nonetheless. Man, they were really cooking with the guns in the Broken Steel DLC, eh? Just like the Tesla cannon, there's also a beta version of the Gauss rifle. It pretty much uses all of the laser rifle's assets, although the scope is oddly fully complete. The Cryolator was supposed to be a craftable weapon, but it was scrapped very early in development. However, this was finally introduced in Fallout 4. Finally, there's two versions of Molotovs that were cut very early in development, just like the Cryolator. The one on the left is a Nuka cocktail, while the other one is just a normal Molotov, and these obviously went with the lighter texture that I showed at the beginning of the video. It's time for the sounds and voice lines, and surprisingly, we don't have that many to cover this time. But we're going to start with the sound effects first, as there's only 4 of them. So this first sound effect is the original firing sound for the 10mm pistol. I have no idea why they swapped this sound out. This version sounds so much heftier. This next one is kind of strange, but I believe it was going to be used in Operation Anchorage as some sort of grenade countdown. The last 2 sound effects are for the Molotovs exploding, so it seems the Molotovs actually got further in development than I may have thought. Now, onto the voice lines, and honestly, these are some interesting ones. These first 3 are placeholder lines for Liberty Prime.
Placeholder 10. Placeholder 11. Placeholder 12.
It's kind of interesting to hear a placeholder line with the final game's effect on it. Usually when it comes to a character that has some sort of voice effect, placeholder voice lines don't have an effect at all, and it's usually just spoken in the developer's normal voice. This next voice line is a demo or a placeholder for the various friendly Mr. Hanley robots you come across in the wasteland.
Good day to you, sir. If I may be so bold, the blue of the vault suit contrasts brilliantly with your eyes. You stupid git.
These next voice lines were used as placeholders during your birthday party in the vault.
Surprise! Happy birthday!
Yep.
Did that voice sound familiar at all to you? Well, it's the legendary Todd Howard himself.
When? I didn't know that. How can this be?
Finally, a whole radio station was cut called Tenpenny Radio, and all these voice lines are just random sayings from the station. I sadly don't know if any songs would have played on this or if it was just a talking station, but it does seem like a decent amount of work went into it.
This is Tenpenny Tower Radio, music and inspiring talk for forward-thinking people. This has been a Tenpenny truism. The poor man wishes for prosperity. The rich man makes his own. Never wonder for a moment if you're worthy of the benefits you possess. Rather wonder always if you have utilized them to their fullest. The beggar must lay down his cup, for a man needs both hands to grasp the future. Let us release our fears of the past into our hopes for the future. Thank you for listening to Tenpenny Tower Radio Service, brought to you by Alistair Tenpenny.
As we come to the end of the video, it's time for the various oddities I found throughout the game. This first oddity you may already know about, but I definitely can't leave it out of a video like this. But did you know that the metro car you use to travel in the Broken Steel DLC is actually an NPC with a train car attached to his head? Well, that's definitely an interesting way to simulate the player traveling. There's a strange weapon literally called Hand Laser, and I'm not really sure what the purpose of this was. I'm guessing it's used by an NPC like a Protectron or something, but I honestly have no idea. Did you know that you can actually use Liberty Prime's bomb? One strange thing about it is it has a stupidly high sell value, despite the fact that this weapon is never obtainable. It's also huge, like it pretty much engulfs the player when it's held in your hand. Despite how goofy it looks, it's actually a super fun weapon to mess around with. This acid spit weapon is used by the Ant Queen, but did you know that it uses a special type of missile ammo and the missile launcher's animations when being used by the player? The birth skirt is something you really never see in the game, but it's worn by your mother at the very beginning, and that's it. It's only textured on the one side, and it seems to stretch downwards on the other side. I could have put this in the cut clothing section, but honestly I feel like it belongs here in the oddities. Just like this next one, I could have put it in the clothing section as well, but I feel like it fits better here. This pair of lab goggles was cut from the Point Lookout DLC, and I have no idea why. They look the exact same as the biker goggles, but with a 5% energy boost. The last oddity I have for you is the initials MQ outside of the Jefferson Memorial. Now, you may be thinking this is the initials of a developer. Well, that's not the case. The MQ actually stands for Main Quest, and there's 6 invisible markers under the initials, which basically tells the game which main quest you're currently on. Very cool to see. Stuff like this is usually only seen in map editors. And that's all I have for Fallout 3. The past week or so, I was working on a final spooky video for Halloween, but I sadly couldn't get it uploaded in time. So I've just decided to put it on hold, and I'll most likely upload it later this year. Plus, Black Ops 6 stole a lot of my free time. That game is just amazing. Anywho, I hope I was able to show you something new here. I know Fallout 3 has been picked through quite heavily. But as always, if you have a suggestion for the next What Was Cut episode, please feel free to comment down below. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.